Why the compounding debt crisis is consuming the US, Europe, and Japan. Flint West reporting. Section 1. Because expanding debt is used as the fuel for economic growth, modern fiat-based fractional reserve banking systems are structurally engineered around continuous credit expansion and ongoing money creation. Economic activity, asset prices, consumption, and government spending increasingly depend on the constant issuance of new debt to sustain growth. But very few people stop and ask the deeper question: what happens when the mathematics of the system itself becomes unstable? Because here's the uncomfortable reality: compounding debt grows exponentially. Real economies generally do not. That's the entire game. Debt compounds like a snowball rolling downhill. Interest gets charged on top of interest. Deficits stack on deficits. Old debt gets refinanced with new debt. And over time, the curve bends upward faster and faster. Meanwhile, real economic growth behaves very differently. Populations age, productivity slows, markets mature, infrastructure saturates, consumption plateaus. In other words, economic growth often starts behaving more like an S-curve than an infinite exponential curve. And that is where the structural tension begins. Because if debt compounds exponentially while the productive economy slows structurally over time, eventually the debt burden begins growing faster than the economy supporting it. Section 2. That does not automatically mean instant collapse. That's important. Countries with monetary sovereignty, like the United States or Japan, can delay the reckoning for a very long time through monetary intervention, refinancing, inflation, yield suppression, and currency debasement. But delay is not the same thing as resolution. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 3. Look around the developed world right now. Japan's debt-to-GDP ratio has spent years above 200%. The United States has moved beyond 120% debt to GDP. Large parts of Europe remain heavily indebted while growth stagnates and demographics deteriorate. But honestly, debt to GDP alone doesn't even tell the full story anymore. Section 4. The real pressure point is interest expense. Because once interest costs begin consuming larger shares of government revenue, the system starts cannibalizing itself. More taxes go towards servicing yesterday's borrowing instead of building tomorrow's productivity. Infrastructure gets deferred. Military budgets get squeezed. Social promises become politically radioactive. Private investment gets crowded out. And the entire economy slowly becomes optimized around debt maintenance rather than productive expansion. That's the hidden transition most people still don't see. We are moving from growth economies to debt management economies. That's why central banks become trapped. They cannot allow rates to rise too high because the interest burden explodes. But they also cannot keep printing indefinitely without risking inflation, currency weakness, and capital flight. Section 5. So the entire developed world enters a strange balancing act. Suppress rates, roll debt forward, inflate selectively, protect asset prices. Hope productivity or technology eventually outruns the compounding curve. Sometimes it works for a while, but mathematically the pressure keeps accumulating underneath the surface, and that's why this matters. The real danger is not necessarily dramatic sovereign bankruptcy. The real danger is slower growth, lower dynamism, permanent financial repression, currency dilution, rising fragility, and societies becoming increasingly dependent on debt expansion simply to maintain stability. Section 6. Conclusion. That's the compounding debt crisis, not an overnight explosion, a slow structural consumption of economic flexibility itself. And right now, from the United States to Europe to Japan, the developed world is already inside it. Flint West signing off.